This is huge. So the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza ahead of this vote on the matter in Parliament tomorrow. Speaking this afternoon, Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy outlined Labour's new position.
A humanitarian ceasefire that's immediate requires both sides to lay down their arms, and we're really clear about that. It requires those hostages to be returned, and we're absolutely clear about that.
No, you're not, because it's not quite as simple as that, OK? So reports tonight suggest that Keir Starmer will tell his party to abstain on the SNP's motion calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. So Scottish National Party in Westminster have backed Labour into a corner big time by putting forward a motion to say an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Now, a sizable number of Labour MPs are preparing to ignore Keir Starmer and just vote with the SNP. They may well include members of his front bench. I'm joined now by the author and podcaster Konstantin Kisin. Konstantin, thank you very much. Keir Starmer is in massive trouble here, isn't he?
Well, the funny thing about this is it shows that, decisive leadership is getting your MPs to abstain on a vote. And actually, people always talk about a U-turn as a bad thing. I generally don't always feel that way. I think it's good for politicians to change their mind. It's good for politicians to change the things that they advocate for based on the facts and the evidence and being presented with an evolving view of things. But of course, we know that with Keir Starmer, that isn't the case. He didn't know what a woman was for quite a long time. And then suddenly he discovered the truth about this difficult to adjudicate issue. And it wasn't because he was confronted with new facts and new information, but because spineless as he is, he was pressured into it by people criticizing him over it. And likewise, in this instance, he knows what the right thing to do is. And we should give him some credit, Patrick. When he became leader of the Labour Party, he attempted to purge the party of the anti-Semitic Corbynista left. He got rid of a few people that needed getting rid of. What he's got now is he's between a rock and a hard place, because on the one hand, he knows what the right thing to do here is, which is, of course, if you want a ceasefire and if you want to call for one, that's something I actually support. You have to call on Hamas to hand over the hostages and hand over the terrorists who took them, and to lay down the weapons and to commit to not being terrorists anymore. Or he has to pander to the people who simply stop the world that want to get off in his own party, who want to call for a ceasefire, not because they think it's going to achieve anything, but because what they're doing, as you well know, because you were discussing it before I came on the program, is they're pandering to the part of their vote who simply want to make an issue out of this. And frankly, you got to take a step back here, Patrick, and look at the fact that we're all spending an inordinate amount of time talking about a conflict very, very far away. And it seems to be at the top of the list of priorities for a party that's supposed to represent the British people, not a very small minority of people who seem to care about this issue as much as they do.
Yeah, it's clearly top of the list for actually quite a large percentage, a worryingly large percentage, if you ask me, of our population who care more about Gaza maybe than what's going on in their local area. So just to clarify, and this has been a moving picture in the last couple of hours, so Keir Starmer appears to have been outflanked from both sides on this now. So the government has tabled an amendment to the ceasefire vote tomorrow in which they are calling for negotiations for an immediate humanitarian pause, followed by a permanent sustainable ceasefire. It's all just this kind of word salad, right? So obviously Starmer can't tell his MPs to vote for that. Simultaneously, he can't tell his MPs to vote for the SNP one, which is a complete, total, utter, immediate ceasefire. So now he is saying to his MPs, please just abstain. But his MPs are getting absolutely hounded out of town everywhere they go at the moment. There's posters going up saying you're complicit with genocide, blood on your hands, etc., etc. I mean, he can't continue like this. I mean, he literally cannot just tell them to say nothing. Surely they're going to vote. They're going to vote one way or the other.
And what it shows, Patrick, is something that many of us have been saying for a long time, which is if you play with that thing, you are going to go blind. And the thing that they have been playing with is identity politics, encouraging people to vote with their religion or with their ethnicity or with their racial group, instead of saying to them, look, we're all British and we're going to vote for the parties that best represent our interests in terms of the economy, in terms of local services, in terms of the National Health Service, in terms of the policy we want on tax and the armed services. Instead, they've been saying to people, you are this ethnic group, or you are this ethnic religion, or this religious group, or whatever, and you need to vote for us because we are the people who stand up for people with your skin color or with your belief system. And now they are finding out that when you play with that thing, you end up in a very bad position where people say to you, well, you promised us that you were the advocate for our particular niche worldview. You better deliver. And that's why they're getting hounded. And that's why Keir Starmer is in a position where, of course, he simply cannot tell the truth because the truth is unpalatable to both sides of his party.
It will be fascinating to see. This time tomorrow, we will know, probably, actually, how many Labour MPs decided to go against Sir Keir Starmer and decided to vote instead of abstain, and what that will mean for him. Keep an eye on his front bench. I mean, this could be massive. But look, Konstantin, just to move things on slightly, Starmer has perhaps performed his fastest U-turn yet, all right? So this time it was over his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray's plans to create a citizens' assembly, or a series of them, to scrutinise new laws. She announced the scheme in an interview yesterday, but less than 12 hours later, Labour officials insisted it was not an official policy. What you're seeing on your screens there is the two headlines, OK? Sue Gray announces citizen juries that will bypass Whitehall. And then, there we go, next to it, Labour backtracks. Just a few hours apart there. Konstantin, is Sue Gray fast becoming a liability for Labour? Do you think a lack of consistency? What do you make of it all?
You know, I actually am a big fan of the idea of citizen assembly, so I'm not particularly critical of them attempting to pursue it. But it does seem like every time they suggest a policy, they go back on it very quickly. And again, we've got to be clear here, Patrick. It's not as if they were confronted with new information about the benefits or otherwise of citizens' assembly. This is about people politicking over this and being scared to go with the thing that they actually know they need to do, or with a policy that someone suggested. So it just shows you two things. The first of them is we have politicians who are utterly spineless. This is true, of course, on the other side of the House of Commons too. And the other thing, of course, is that despite all of this, I'm afraid when the next election comes, the Labour Party is still almost certainly going to defeat the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is even more useless. So it's not a great place and time in British politics at the moment.
No, indeed. Now, look, finally, Culture Secretary Lucy Fraser has taken aim at theatres that add trigger warnings to Shakespeare's plays. They're warning that audiences should not be treated like children. Now, her intervention came just weeks after the legendary British actor Ralph Fiennes called on theatres to stop using the warnings. He had this to say.
I think the impact of theatre should be that you're shocked and you should be disturbed. I don't think you should be prepared for these things. And when I was young, we never had trigger warnings for shows.
So would you get rid of them then?
I would, yes, I would.
Trigger warnings on Shakespeare, Konstantin. Are we a bit too soft these days? What do you make of it?
Shock, horror, man speaks sense on television. Well, I mean, you know what? We talk about this issue so much, I don't even know what else to add, really. We all know this is complete nonsense. We all know that adults are failing young people and children by training them to think in this way. We all know, by the way, Patrick, as you well do, that the evidence on this is very clear. When you give people trigger warnings, they're much more likely to be hurt by the things that they actually then see and listen to. So, of course, we shouldn't be doing this. It's a complete waste of time. Ralph Fiennes, I'm glad he's adding his voice to this conversation. We've got to make children and young people resilient, not fragile.
Just to add one more question onto this now, do you think there's going to be some pushback? Do you expect that there's going to be some resistance, some rebellion to this at some point, that there will be a generation that comes up very soon that goes, look, screw all of this nonsense, you know, I'm just going to do my own thing? I mean, are we due that? I'd love to see it.
Well, with Gen Z, I think we are starting to see that. There is a gender split. The young women are very, very woke, and the young men are almost worryingly not woke, to the point where you sort of think, whoa, we're going a bit far here, which was always the worry. You know, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The pushing of this nonsense has been so strong and so powerful for such a long time. It's inevitable that people will be pushing back against it. And I just hope that we can harness those energies into things that are healthy and productive, teaching young people to be strong, confident, and resilient, as opposed to simply going out there to offend, to troll people, which we don't want, because that isn't the recipe for a healthy society either. Yes, we should have the right to offend. Whether we should actually be doing that for the sake of it is a whole different question.
Konstantin, thank you very much. And can I congratulate you as well on reaching a bit of a milestone, I think, in your other life as a podcaster and trigonometry and all of that as well. How many subscribers have you managed to get now?
Well, trigonometry is fast approaching 1 million, but actually the milestone I had this week is my Substack has now reached 40,000 subscribers, and 2.5 of them give me money, which I really appreciate because it allowed me to do what I do. Thank you very much for that, and thanks for having me on the show.
Well done. Keep up the good work. Take care. That's Konstantin Kisin there.